Join Hans and Scotty today from noon to 3. They're going to be at RGS Exteriors, 4235 Farm Road in West Jordan.
Fill my life with song.
DJ, PK, Frank Sinatra, and Richard Smith. Smitty, good morning.
Morning, guys. How we doing?
Doing well.
You're a Sinatra guy, aren't you?
I'm a Sinatra guy, and you know when we used to drive around with Frank and Barbara and going to various social events and whatnot, we would frequently have either Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin cranked up in the car, and Frank and Barbara would be singing along, and they would know all the words to whatever song just happened to pop on, and that was the joy of getting to know them and to be able to spend time with them and call them our friends.
Throw in a little Tony Bennett and you got a deal.
Here we go.
Richard Smith joining us, worked for the Jazz for 4 decades. Did Frank actually hire you?
Yeah, well, in a technical sense, yeah. It's actually, well, it's a funny story. I actually started doing some part-time game night stuff for Laura Hurlovich and the PR crew on game nights. And then when Frank took over as the head coach and he brought Scott in as his assistant, Scott and I got to know each other on a personal level. And it was Scott who one time we were at a University of Utah basketball game. And we were talking about what was going on in the game and whatnot. And I asked him, hey, who keeps track of all this stuff for you guys? And he goes, oh, nobody. And I said, well, why is that? And he just shrugged like, nah, I don't know. And I said, this is some of the stuff I used to do when I was in graduate school and all this kind of stuff, tracking offense and shots and all this stuff. I said, I could do that if you guys want, if that could be of any help. He goes, oh, let me ask my dad. And so he calls me back a couple of days later. He goes, yeah, my dad said, come on down, you know, so which is typical Frank, you know. And so I started doing stuff behind the bench and tracking offense and offensive shots and shot chart stuff. And that kind of started the whole thing from a volunteer, you know, non-paid, just hanging out, helping out things. One thing led to another, and every year there was a little more. Hey, can you also do this other thing for us? And while you're doing that thing, and yeah, okay, you know, and all that. And then when Jerry took over as the coach, I asked the coach if he wanted to change it and, you know, wanted me to exit out the back door. And he goes, no, and just do the same thing. Why would we change it, you know? And that's what started that whole 40-year relationship of mine with the Jazz and with Coach Layden.
Didn't it seem so innocent in those days compared to what it is now?
Well, you know what it was, PK. It was such a smaller group. You know, at that time when Scott came in, and you guys know, in the early mid '80s, before Larry Miller got involved, the Jazz with Sam Battistone and his ownership group, they were really teetering financially on how to run the Jazz, and that's in part why Larry Miller brought in Dave Checkett when he bought the team to try and get some financial stability with the Jazz. And for several years in the early 80s, the Jazz had trouble not only getting enough people to the games and selling tickets, but also doing a simple thing like making payroll to both the players and their employees. And but we had so few. You know, Scott Layden, for example, when he came in, the first several years he was involved. He was on the bench as Frank's assistant coach, but he was also in charge of college scouting. He was also in charge of the draft. He was also in charge of pro scouting in case the Jazz wanted to make some kind of a trade or sign a free agent. And he was the one who was doing all of that stuff at that time, which now, when you look at those jobs, there's literally 8, 10, 12 people involved in those different areas trying to make sound decisions. And at that time, it was Frank and Scott and maybe Jack Gardner was working a little bit on the side for the Jazz after his University of Utah retirement, and a little bit of Tom Stanky from Westminster College who was helping out, and David Fredman who was doing PR stuff, but he was also doing some scouting. It was kind of everybody doing a lot of different things, and so it was more of a family type atmosphere, in part because that's the way the NBA was at the time. I mean, we all know in the 60s, Red Auerbach didn't have an assistant. He just did it himself, and with the Celtics, and then, even when you got to the 80s, people had small staff, and now you look at a bench of any NBA team during a game, and you have no idea how many coaches they have because there's so many people involved, which can be good, and also, might cause some problems. As they say, there's, sometimes there could be too many cooks in the kitchen,
When Frank was building the Jazz, was there ever a moment where he really knew he had something, or did success sneak up on him a little bit? Were you involved that much in those early days?
Yeah, well, when I got involved, DJ, it was interesting when you look back on it, in successive drafts in the early 80s that he was in charge of, and then Scott kind of took over, and they kind of worked in tandem on it. But in the early 80s, think of it, the draft were 10 rounds back when I first started, and then they cut it down to 8, and then eventually down to the current 2. But at that time, you had a lot of draft picks that you had available to you, and a lot of times you didn't even know who guys were other than statistics that you had read about on them. But the successive drafts for the Jazz in the early 80s, how about this? In 1980, you get Darrell Griffith, okay? In 82, you get Dominique Wilkins, who obviously didn't come in part because he didn't want to come, but also in part because the Jazz had money problems, and that was a way to solve some of those by selling his rights to the Atlanta Hawks. But you had Darrell Griffith, then you drafted Dominic Wilkins, then you drafted Thurl Bailey, then you drafted Bobby Hansen, then you drafted Mark Eaton, then you drafted John Stockton, then you drafted Karl Malone. That was all between 80 and 85. So Frank obviously knew what he was doing, and he knew that he had to build the team through the draft and had to do it piece by piece, step by step. And I remember in the 85 draft, I was on the stage with he and Scott, and we're looking at as the draft's unfolding. Everybody thinks that Karl Malone is going to go 5, 6, 7, and now it's pick 9, 10, 11. We have 13. I'm not sure what's going on, but Scott's saying, hey, if Malone is falling and if he gets to us, we have to take him. He's the best player that's still left. And I remember Frank saying, well, what's the matter with him? Something's wrong with him if he's fallen, right? Like he either has an injury we don't know about, or he has some kind of off-court issue that we're not aware of. And Scott said, no, I don't know of anything, but he's the best player of this group that's left. And, of course, the Washington Bullets took Kenny Green from Wake Forest at 12, and then that left Karl at 13. And so Frank says, are you sure about this? And Scott goes, yeah, no, he's the best player. We got to take him. So Frank goes, well, I hope you know what you're doing, and goes and makes the pick. And then afterwards in the interviews, somebody asked him about, hey, you hope Malone can come in and score and everything. And Frank said, well, I don't know about that. He goes, scoring's not our problem. We have enough scoring. We have Darrell Griffith. We have Adrian Dantley. We have John Drew. We have Ricky Green. We can score okay. And we have the big guy, Mark Eaton, in the middle, who's developing into a rim protector, shot blocker. But we're third to the last in the league in rebounding. So what we need from him to come in and do is really be a tenacious rebounder on both ends. And that will be his job initially, to fit in with us. And then if he scores 8 or 10 points a game, that'll be a bonus. Okay? and then whatever it is, 35,000 points later, and so that's one of those great stories where, you think you have something and you think the something is this, and then the something turns into something much greater, and everybody's going, hey, Karl Malone, hey, what a great pick, and Frank would always be the first one to say, hey, if we knew he was going to be Karl Malone, we would have traded up to try and get him.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's going to turn out to be. You just hope you've got something you can work with in some regard, and then it takes a life of its own, and it goes the way it's going to go. And we were very fortunate, obviously, back-to-back drafts with John Stockton and Karl Malone being picked at 16 and 13. And not only that they proved to be great players, proved to be great culture-type people for the Jazz organization that Frank was building, but also the fact that, 13 of the 19 years they played together, neither guy missed a game. And so they played 8 preseason games every year. They played 82 regular season, and they were in the playoffs every year. So you're talking about in the neighborhood of playing 100 games a year, and neither guy missed a game for 13 of those 19 years. That's the stuff you can't plan for.
Right. He was a commentator for Utah basketball when I was a beat writer for the newspaper, so you get an opportunity to travel, and I'd been around him after that too. But speak to the level of which he treated people. It was really just amazing to be in podunk places, out-of-the-way places, Fresno, Fort Collins, or wherever, and people would come up to him, and he always had time. It was just amazing in that way, and I'm sure you saw that very thing probably a million more times than I did.
No, well, this is tough to talk about because Frank that's one of the reasons that everybody loved working with him and everybody loved working for him. And it would be hard to find someone who was working with that group at that time or any time that he was associated with the Jazz to say that they didn't love working for him, because he treated everybody, PK, exactly the same. And it wasn't a fake thing, and it wasn't a PR thing. It was just his nature and his personality, where he felt that everybody deserved equal time. Everybody deserved the proper amount of attention and respect. He always lived by, he was a great Jackie Robinson fan, as you guys know. And, he always used to love to tell the story about him skipping school on that April day when Jackie Robinson made his debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And he was at the game. And he wanted to see it firsthand, as he was a 15-year-old at that time. And he always lived by that mantra of Jackie Robinson's, which is, a life is only as important as the impact it has on other lives. And he lived that every day. Anytime, anywhere you went, it didn't matter. And we traveled a lot together professionally and socially. And no matter where we were, he had the time of day for anybody who would say hello. And he always greeted them with a smile and a handshake and some kind of a joke, or three women would come walking by in the hotel lobby, and they would kind of look and nod and like polite hello, and he goes, hey, is the Miss America pageant in town today? And they would bust up laughing, and but he had a million of those kind of lines, but it was always with the feeling and the effort to make people feel good, and to enjoy the moment that you have interacting together. And that's one thing I've learned from him, one thing I've tried to emulate myself. Obviously, I can't do it to the extent that he does, but he was just such a genuine person. And you talk to any of the Jazz people who worked for him in the 80s, and they would line up at the door, whatever Frank needs, whatever he's got going on, here we are, let's go. And that's who he was from beginning to end, and that was all 100% genuine. It was all real. It wasn't, hey, I'm just trying to make myself look good or something. It was from the heart, and that's what made him the person that he was.
You want to tell people what you're doing right now? Frank would approve of this.
No, so like a month ago, whatever, Frank spent the last few months in the hospital trying to get his breathing right and all of that. And we would go up and see him all the time, and said, Coach, we've been doing these baseball trips. It's my wife Linda and myself, our friends Chris Lino and Colleen Lindstrom, and Frank and Barbara Layden. And the six of us started in 2011 going on every summer, going to a different major league ballpark that somebody hasn't been to, because Frank, for those people who don't know, was more of a baseball fan than he was a basketball fan in reality. And so we started going to a different major league ballpark every summer and spending a weekend series there. And we told him about a month ago, Coach, don't know if you're going to be able to go with us or not, but in July we're planning to go to Cincinnati to see the Reds, because we haven't been to that ballpark yet. And he said, yeah, that'd be great. You guys got to do that. And make sure you bring me back some souvenirs and all this stuff. And that happened to be this week. And so yesterday, all the news and stuff about Frank's passing and talking with the family and all that kind of stuff. And we knew, there wasn't even a question about it, that this is where we're supposed to be to honor Frank, by being at the ballpark last night and singing vociferously when the seventh inning stretch came on in his honor. And it couldn't be a more fitting tribute to what Frank meant to us and what he was all about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. My wife and I are doing that. We're going to hit up Toronto as the next one. So we do the same thing, Smitty. And I know you've met my wife multiple times, and our wives know each other. And so she set that up. So that's what we'll be doing next week. And that's the thing about that, man, is Frank with that glove sitting at whatever they call the ballpark where the Bees played. I'd change names, but I have memories of him sitting there. I was calling games. I'd call games, and you'd look down the third base line, and there he would be sitting in there with that baseball glove, and just a regular old dude who was basically a national celebrity, but you wouldn't know it, and he was there just to watch the baseball game.
PK, we were at a game one time at the Bees. Frank and Barbara had seats right behind the visitors' dugout on third base.
Yep.
And he would always have his glove with him.
Yep.
And he'd be pounding his glove like as the pitch was getting ready to be made, as if he was going to make a fielding play, okay? So one game, a left-hander comes up, and he skews one right toward us, and it was a low liner, and it skims right off the top of the dugout, and we all, back away and turn our heads, whatever, and Frank just stands up, and he swipes his glove, boom, and picks it off just like the Freddie Freeman at first base. And he scoops it up, and he looks in the glove, and we go, and we're looking around like, where'd did you get that? And he goes, what do you think this is? And he picks the ball out of the glove, and the whole place goes crazy. And, but I'm telling you, it was a screamer, and he just swiped at it like any Gold Glove first baseman, and it was
Gil
no
Hodges.
big deal. Yeah, it was awesome, and I got to tell you, I got to tell this quick anecdote, baseball related. Last month, we go to see him in the hospital, and said, Coach, we're going down to see the Dodgers now. He's very good friends with Stan Kasten, who's the president of the Dodgers, but Stan Kasten was the young, right out of law school attorney for the Atlanta Braves back in the 70s, when Frank was the assistant coach of the Atlanta Hawks. And so he's known Stan Kasten since he was right out of law school. And said, we're going down to see the Dodgers. We're going to tell Stan you said hi and Cheryl and all our Dodger friends. And he said, hey, you got to do something for me. I said, okay. So when you go, you got to get something for Omar, who's the gentleman who helps him. He and Barbara with their daily care. There's a caregiver. He and his wife Lauren Lemus, who are great people, have done a great job with with Frank and Barbara in these latter days, and they take such good care of him. And he says you got to bring back something from the Dodgers because he's a big Dodger fan. I said, okay, Coach, but he's having trouble speaking, and so we were communicating. I finally figured out that's what he wanted. So I go to Dodgers and I bring back a bunch of stuff and give it to Omar. And he said, oh, this is great, Smitty. Oh, I love it. Oh. And I said, hey, Omar, it isn't me. I said, this is Frank. I'm just the courier. I said, Frank instructed me to do this. And so that's what I did. And so he's the guy. He goes, oh, Frank, thank you. Oh, this is unbelievable. This is great. And Frank just smiled and gave a fist pump in the air. I mean, in his hospital bed, not being able to make these kind of trips, like we always had, he was still trying to figure out what he could do for somebody else, and make somebody else's day.
Great story.
And that's how he was literally right up to the end.
Yep.
He was always thinking about what can I do for you? How can I do something that brings a smile to your face? And that's who he was, and that was it.
Beautiful life that he lived. What a man.
Yeah, unbelievable. 93 years, right?
Yep.
93, and he's one that you could actively and accurately say he was 93 years young.
Yeah.
You know?
Smitty, we appreciate the time. You can get back to Cincinnati and checking off ballparks. And thanks for coming on and sharing some memories with Frank, about Frank.
Good to visit with you guys. And we all love Frank and Barbara so much. And the Salt Lake community and the state of Utah are better off because they chose to make their home there after his career was over, and enrich our community so much with what they did in their charitable endeavors and just how they carried themselves as icons in our community. And we all know he'll be dearly, dearly missed by everybody.
Well said, brother.
Thank you, Smitty.
Thank you, guys.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Barry Tramel, sports columnist for the Tulsa World, is talking Big 12 football media days. What did he learn? Who does he like to win it all now? And how quickly will he change that opinion? Because none of us really know anything. We'll find out from Barry next. Stay with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Look, kids, I know that you've had everything given to you your whole life, but when the NBA draft comes around, I don't care where you say you want to be, no one cares. And you know who really doesn't care? Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge will pick you, all right? The draft that the Jazz had was basically, and maybe I'm seeing it through, what's the color scheme nowadays for the Jazz?
Purple colored glasses, I think.
I look at it and I go, all right, maybe we look at it through that. We won't really know, but everybody looking at this thing has to look at Utah and go, man, they had a pretty darn good draft.
I don't hear anybody nationally, these people that cover the draft every year, say anything negative about this. I think there's been a lot of positive feedback. I've heard some say the Jazz got two of the best tough shot makers in the draft. Ace Bailey was supposed to be third minimum. The Jazz just got that kid in number 5.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Come fly with me and nominate the Youth Sports Volunteer that you know for the Hercules Year of the Week. Submit your nomination at KSLSports.com/contest. Listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. And I was at the Dallas airport last night, and I heard that Frank Layden had died, and I stood up, started singing right there in the terminal, "Come fly with me, let's fly away." I got wrestled to the ground.
Not for the first time. DJ PK and Barry Tramel joins us now, sports columnist for the Tulsa World. Barry, good morning.
You guys doing?
Doing well, man. I was in Dallas, the Star, for a couple of days. Saw you. I love the white hair, man. That's your trademark, isn't it?
Well, I got to have something to make me stand out. And
it's a little longer.
It's about the only thing I got going left. Here's a funny story. They have the video. They run that video at the press conference, and I didn't really pay attention to it. And I saw somebody was up on the stage. I can't remember who, but they showed the camera on the people asking the question, and I didn't realize that. And I was just sitting there, and somebody close to me asked a question, and all of a sudden I look up, and there's a person asking the question. In the background was this guy with a bunch of hair that needed a haircut. That was my first impression. And then I looked at the face, and it was me. I thought, man, you need a haircut, pal.
I kind of thought that, too, because I was sitting in the third row. You probably saw us. We had the big banner, and we were there from 7 in the morning till 8, I guess, their time, until 6 in the evening, because that's our broadcast hours here. We did the whole thing both days. And, I love seeing you walk around there. The color of the hair and the length of it made you stand out. I'm thinking, man, that is a guy after my heart. That's an old-time newspaper guy, and that's the way we're supposed to look.
Well, I guess so. Every year I get older, and the mean age of all the press corps gets younger. So it's a mighty gulf between us.
Yeah.
So we'll see how long I can keep that up. But every year I know fewer and fewer of the people. Golly, I look around and see. I literally look out on the vast people and see 324-year-olds. I have no idea who they are. So I'm not. I'm actually on a better relationship with the majority of Big 12 coaches than I am the Big 12 press corps. But it's fun. I always enjoy the heck out of going.
I did enjoy when you got up to ask a question of the commissioner, and they introduced you as Big 12 legend, and it's like you were just like waiting it out. Like, can we get on with enough of the dog and pony? Do you remember you asked me the first question? And that was when I thought PK's thing about an old-time newspaper guy. Like, don't make me the story here. I got a question for you. Just you had to wait through some pomp and circumstance there, Barry.
I did try to downplay it.
I know,
but I was thrilled. I was thrilled inside because last year at SEC Media Days, Josh Heupel, Tennessee coach, former Oklahoma quarterback, he's up there, and I asked him a question during the press conference. Barry Tramel, Tulsa World, and Josh responds immediately and says, "Barry Tramel, the Grand Wizard of Oklahoma media." And I thought, what? Now listen, hey Josh, we're not in South Dakota anymore. You just came up with a pretty powerful term there. So I'll take legend over Grand Wizard today.
Good call.
What was your impression walking away from the Big 12 Media Days? How good is this conference going to be? Who might be better than everybody else? Did you get any feel for that? Or it's still all a mystery?
Well, I think it's all a mystery. I do like anybody that's got a good quarterback.
That's a lot of teams this year.
And that is a lot of teams. That's about 10 or 11.
Yeah.
BYU is used to be on that list and now is not. But of course, not having one now that we know about doesn't mean you won't have one. And this time last year, nobody was excited. Quarterback and some other guys developed and had nice years, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But one of the coaches yesterday, I forgot who it was, said, "You're not winning without a good quarterback." Might have been Rich Rodriguez, who, by the way, is a fantastic addition to the conference. because somewhere in Jacksonville, Alabama, or somewhere in Tucson or Ann Arbor or wherever, he left his filter behind and he hadn't put it back on. So he's likely to say anything. But I like any of those teams with good quarterback, and like Utah is an interesting one because it looks like they might have one, but I'm not sure. Even Kyle Whittingham said, we got to get that touchdown to interception ratio better. I think he was at 12-12 at New Mexico last year, I think, for Dampier. But anyway, lots of good quarterbacks, and that's a good place to start for the league, I think.
I totally agree with you. I actually like the pick any number of how deep do you want to go? You want to go 5, you want to go 6, you want to go 7, maybe even 8 teams that could find themselves playing for the title game in Dallas on that first Saturday in December. To me, as a fan, that makes it a little more interesting than wondering, okay, who's Ohio State going to play? Who's Georgia going to play?
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing
no
every
doubt.
year over there. And the Big 12, we got some variety, and it could be any number of teams. And that's like, if I go to a movie and I already know the ending, what's the point of going to the movie?
I think that's a great point. And legitimately making the SEC title game. Like, I think Oklahoma's going to have a good team this year. I think they got virtually no chance to make the title game.
Right.
So you're talking maybe 3 or 4 teams. The Big 12, on my radio deal yesterday, the guys asked me, they went down the list and said, yes or no, can this team win the title? And I went 7 deep on can win it.
Yeah.
If you were asking me, can make it to Arlington, it'd be deeper than that. I might have gone 10 deep.
Right, exactly.
So to me, that's a lot of fun, and it's not conducive, as your Mark said. It's not conducive to getting multiple teams in the playoffs. That's not what the committee's about. The committee is not about interesting teams or even deserving teams. It's just about they like name brands and few losses. That's what they like, and the Big 12 is the opposite of that.
Right.
They beat each other up, and they don't have the big brands. So it's not a great equation when you're trying to get teams into the playoff. But college football likes to spread mistruths, fake news, if you will, when they say they got college football. They got the best regular season in sports. That's what college football has always said. Now, the truth is, that's nonsense, because college football is full of games against Furman and Kent State and Northern Arizona. And guess what most of the other major sports have? They don't have any Furmans. The Jazz, they don't get to play Weber State to get a break. They got to play the Timberwolves and the Thunder back-to-back. So the Big 12 is actually a little bit of a counter to that. The Big 12 is the best regular season in college football. There's not any question about that. So it's a lot of fun. They play 9 conference games. They go very deep in competitive teams, and it's great theater. It's just not going to do much for you in January.
So who are your 7 teams that can win it? I want to hear your list and see if it's the same as mine. I'm sure there's a lot of overlap.
I went let's see. I went Texas Tech, TCU. I'm going to go geography. Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor, Kansas State, Iowa State, BYU, Arizona State, and I gave Utah as a maybe. I think it was 7 and maybe 8 is what it was. I put Utah and Brigham Young close together in that I think both are going to be really good on defense, and then they just have the quarterback question.
Right.
So that's how deep I go. And Kansas is another maybe. Kansas could surprise because they weren't bad last year. They just got off to the bad start and lost a bunch of close games. And then down the stretch, they, popped some people, including BYU, kept BYU out of Arlington. So I think Kansas probably deserves on that list too. So that's the 9, I would say, who can make it to Arlington, and I'd probably throw, I think we probably shouldn't sell Dion short because we did, and then he proved us wrong. So can't do that anymore. So that's probably the 10 that can make it to Arlington. I think Arizona's going to be better. And that's as far as I'll go. I mean, I think West Virginia, UCF, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, Houston. Maybe I'll have somebody out, but I don't think they're going to be very good at all.
I think Arizona can get you on a given Saturday. I don't know about across the 9 games if they've got enough to hold up over all conference games. But I think when we get to Thanksgiving weekend and it's concluded the regular season, we're going to look back and Arizona's going to have 1, maybe 2 games that we didn't see them winning because I think just having Brennan, I think that everything is settled down. There was so much commotion after Fish left, and it was a bitter departure because he had said he can see himself, building a career here in Tucson, and then boom, he's out the door. I mean, coaches should never say that because you never know what's going to happen the following week, and Nick Saban retires and the dominoes, and he ends up over in Washington. And so you had all that stuff, and that created an issue that they never could get under control. This year it's settled down. I don't think they're a great team, but I think on any given Saturday, Noah Fafita can throw for 5 touchdowns and 350 yards, and he's going to beat you, and we'll see how that plays out. I do think that we're going to end up with the Big 12. We followed this in the Pac-12 for several years. Is like, they don't have a team in the 4-team playoff, and it became like a Phil Mickelson thing. You don't have a major, and it just built with each succeeding year that Phil didn't have a major. You don't have a team in the playoff, blah, 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 and it became such a big issue. Now, I think that with the Big 12, it's going to be you don't have a second team in the playoff until they get that second team. And because I think there's a possibility of you very well could have a 3-loss team playing a 2-loss team in Arlington, which isn't going to be good enough to get you a second bid. The way I can think they can get around this is to try to beef up the non-conference schedule. Instead of playing an A and a B and a C game, maybe an A and an A minus and a C, and then knock off one of those big dogs so you can hold on to that. We beat Texas. We went down to Austin and we beat Texas. And you can hold on to sort of like they do in basketball. Oh, man, we beat UConn in Connecticut. And so you can hang on to that. You got something that really catches the committee's eye. And if they can do that, and then even if they do beat each other up to an extent in the conference season, you still have 1 or 2 things that you can hold on to. And that's probably the way to get 2 teams in.
Yeah, I like that theory. 2 things spring to mind. One is if Arizona State had just beaten Texas in the playoff, that would have gone a long way to fixing the perception. I think that's ultimately where the Big 12 is going to have to really get its stripes, is winning in January, and that would have been a great one to get. And I think that will and can and will happen. But also, when you look at this scheduling, the SEC, love it or hate it, either way, I don't care. They did everybody a service because they basically called out the committee and exposed the committee. Didn't expose them, but they basically said the committee is inferior. Now, they meant it was inferior because Alabama and South Carolina and Ole Miss didn't make it, and SMU and whoever else did, Indiana. But they've got the committee on the run, and they've got the committee now. Brett Yormark talked about this, reviewing its policies and looking at all of its protocols. And the committee is so proud of its iPads. Everybody has an iPad, and everybody can watch these games. I've never understood why the committee needs to watch the games. What are they watching?
Great interior line blocking.
Well, that's exactly right. It was not a rhetorical question. I don't know what they're watching. If the results of football games, if Brigham Young goes to SMU and beats the Mustangs 18-15 or 18-16, whatever that funky score was, if that scoreboard is not enough to determine the better football team, then we're focusing on the wrong thing. We need to focus on how we score football games. We shouldn't need analytics. They keep talking about analytics. Why do we need analytics? We got scores. And, I mean, that's the only analytics you need. Now, if you want to have something that that measures strength of schedule and all that stuff, great, fine, whatever. But I think the football committee gets way too caught up in nonsense about, game control and all that stuff. Who cares? I mean, we got scores to go by.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate Auburn, Alabama problem. 1972, Auburn plays Alabama. Alabama's better than Auburn. And with 3 minutes left in the game, Alabama leads 16-3. In the last 3 minutes, Auburn blocked 2 punts for touchdowns and beats Alabama 17-16. And that didn't start anything, but it's the classic example of football people that love film will go to their grave believing that Alabama was better than Auburn that day. To which I say, if block punts for touchdowns don't count as much as real touchdowns, don't give them 6 points for it.
Right.
Give them 4, 3, whatever. But this stuff of let's judge people not on the score is got to go out the window.
Yeah, but on some beauty contest thing. And then you're in the weeds at that point.
Yeah, that's true. They talk about all the football people. We need less football people on the committee. That's what we need.
Some
we need people who don't
with common
understand
sense.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. But I think the SEC put the committee on alert, and so we'll see what they come up with. I don't know what they'll end up doing, but I thought it was the worst committee of all. And maybe that's just because they were having to make so many more decisions. Maybe every other committee would have been as bad if they had to seed 12 instead of 4.
Well, Barry, I could cut you loose here, so you go, schedule a haircut. But really, I think we'd all like to see a ponytail by the time basketball season rolls around. So do it, okay?
That'll never happen. I don't have enough electoral votes in my house to get that one done.
Okay.
So I'm Rhode Island, and my wife is California in terms of electoral votes. So you won't see that.
Okay.
But I probably don't have time to get one before SEC Media Days. I'll see what happens next year when we go wherever we're going.
All right. Thank you, Barry. We appreciate it as always.
See you guys.
Barry Tramel, sports columnist for the Tulsa World. An awkward story from SEC Media Days. He's right. Legend is way better.
I hear you.
DJ and PK, Tim Lacombe, Jazz analyst for SEG Media at the top of the hour. We'll talk Summer League with him. Stay with us.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
I don't think those players ever had the value that they were hoping. It's like sitting on a piece of memorabilia.
You can't hold on to your Zach Wilson number 2 overall draft pick card too long, or it doesn't become worth anything. You got to know when to flip it. That is the job of the front office. Your job is to acquire assets that either help you on the court or help you off the court. And I don't know if John Collins did either.
Yeah, but it's not a big mistake.
No, it's not. The Jazz still accomplished their goal last season. They had the worst record in the NBA. They fell to 5, but that wasn't John Collins' fault. That was a matter of lottery balls. The Jazz hoped John Collins would turn into something different. And even though he played well on the court, he still didn't yield any returns. That's your job. Again, as a front office member, is to predict what the market's going to be. And I think the Jazz mispredicted what the market would be. A, for John, and B, what type of contracts would have value going forward, which is why you had to pay to get off of Collin and why you didn't get anything back for John Collins other than a second-round pick.
Hear Jake Scott and Ben Anderson every day from 10 to noon on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's an RSL Thursday. Caller 12-801-575-ZONE will win a 4-pack of tickets to watch Real Salt Lake take on the Houston Dynamo. Saturday night, America First Field. Houston coming off a 4-3 win over first place San Diego, a wild game. Houston's been giving up goals left and right, 17 in the last 7 games. Maybe you'll see some goals, a ton of them.
I saw a guy in the Dallas airport with a San Diego FC shirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In Dallas?
Yeah.
Dallas.
Was he walking down that hall?
Yeah, in the
Yeah, I saw him in the we were in the same
concourse
terminal.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody flies through Dallas, right?
It's caught my eye.
Yeah. All right, if you want to go Saturday night, call right now, 801-575-ZONE, caller 12. 801-575-ZONE gets 4-pack of tickets to see RSL and the Houston Dynamo. RSL unbeaten in the last 3 games without Diego Luna. It makes no sense, and yet they're playing pretty well here. So we'll see what his role is Saturday night. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Tim Lacombe, what have we learned from Summer League so far? That's next. Stay with us.